Good morning, everyone. My name is Matt Orr. I'm a Eurasia analyst here at Rain. I'm here with my colleague, Ali, and we're going to talk about the cyber threat landscape in 2024. I think it's a very topical, issue in the coming year, certainly for all kinds of reasons that we're going to get into, and specifically, right, the Russia angle on this. Obviously, Russia is a major actor in this space, has been for a long time. It's a topic that generates lots of interest and fanfare. And I think that this is a good opportunity to kind of take a forward-looking look at this well before 2024 actually starts, and see what we can expect. So I guess, Ali, my question for you is, let's kind of start with the geographic angle. Russia, either state actors or ransomware criminal groups. Russia, these actors seem to be active all over the world.
Mhm.
But what are the geographies that you're kind of most watching or looking at with regards to next year?
Yeah, absolutely. Russia is certainly a very interesting case study from the cyber angle because it is such an active hub, not only for their state sponsored activities, but to your point, also some of the most prolific cyber criminal, specifically ransomware groups in the world. And of course, their very large hacktivist presence. So, combined, of course, over the last year and a half or so, much of this activity has focused on areas of Europe and the United States, and to a degree, some allies of the West outside of those two geographies. For example, Japan was the target for one of the pro-Russian hacktivist groups, KillNet, about a year ago, and so we've seen those activities sporadically break outside of what is considered more the explicit West. But I think when we're looking at 2024, this will still be the primary focus of Russian threat activity. Europe, of course, especially Eastern Europe and some of these border countries that, of course, you've been following closely, Matt,
Yeah.
with deteriorating bilateral relationships, Finland, Poland, but also Western Europe. And I think when we're looking into 2024, we have to be very mindful of the very prominent elections that we are slated to undergo in the United States and also in the European Parliament. So I think we naturally are looking to expect a high degree of Russian threat activity around those events.
Yeah, absolutely. You brought up the other major topic here, which is elections, right? Maybe if it's not necessarily geography that's going to change that much in 2024, what's certainly going to change is that we're going to have a major election in the United States in 2024. Uh, the other major context for this is that the war in Ukraine is going on. So I guess my question for you would be, right, in light of those two facts, do you think that kind of Russia's risk tolerance in the digital space is changing? Is it still constrained, or could it actually become more risk tolerance in relation to this critical U.S. election?
It's a very good question, Matt. And I think there are a number of drivers that we maybe can't see yet that would be very primary to this analysis of whether or not Russia's risk calculus increases. I think, naturally, given the fact that elections emphasize information and influence, of course, we're going to see Russia throw all of its weight behind its disinformation operations, which it is already quite good at and has previously been effective targeting US audiences. This is going to be a big election year following the advent, or not the advent, but the popularization of generative AI products. Deepfake technology is becoming better every day. Now, several products, including Valley, only need like a 3-second audio clip to, and we're expecting to see this conducted by politicians as well, not only maybe foreign influencers or other malicious actors, but even because right now regulations around these technologies are a bit slow.
I
But
I have a question about this.
mhm.
I've heard the opinion thrown around, right? So obviously the Russian interference in the 2016 a presidential election was so momentous that it was compared to, like, a cyber Pearl Harbor, and that's an idea that gets
A
thrown
lot of
around
people
in a
about
lot of
cyber.
contexts. But my question is really, in the context of 2024,
Mhm.
like, what is the real possibility that we could see generative AI, deep fakes, things like that have a sudden, unexpected, larger than expected effect on 2024 than maybe we expect right now? How big is that possibility?
I foresee generative AI being extremely prominent in the election also because of the degree of polarization between the candidates and the extraordinary amount of current, political drama, for lack of a better word, surrounding Donald Trump and the lack of precedent around a lot of his trials. I mean, the fodder for topics to sort of capitalize on to spread disinformation over the next year throughout these piecemeal developments, including certain primary moments, Super Tuesday, the Iowa caucuses, and Donald Trump's various court dates. I mean, all of these moments are going to give opportunity for the creation and dispersion of weaponized information that I think, given how sensitive I mean, America's already been through these two politicians going up against each other in the past. And so, there's already very strong feelings and opinions that I think give a lot of fodder for them to capitalize on pre-existing emotions. But looking outside of just influence and information operations, I mean, I think to your question about whether or not Russia could become more risk tolerant in more disruptive operations? I think that's a really good question. And I think the proxy of cyber criminal groups continues to allow Russia to maybe conduct some of those more disruptive operations while still really being able to avoid any kind of connection. We did see Sandworm, which is linked to Russia's GRU, target a Polish logistics company about a year and 2 months ago, October 2022, with ransomware. And that was an interesting break in precedent for an actual state sponsored group to engage in more disruptive cyber campaigning. And I think we could see that sporadically, Matt, but I don't see why we would have Russia break through its current risk level, especially while it doesn't have major gains in Ukraine still. I mean, while it's probably happy that it's in a stalemate position, it's not.
Right. It would be a lot of risk for speculative, unclear reward. I think the thing that I'm most looking out for in 2024 is, right, using criminal ransomware groups, right, the Russian state taking a more proactive effort to direct the attacks of criminal ransomware groups with an eye towards just doing economic disruption in a way that, right, is intended to influence the US election. Um, as you know, I remember very clearly the JBS meats attack and the Colonial Pipeline attack, which were conducted just a few months before ultimately the Biden administration agreed to its first summit with President Putin in the summer of 2021. And then that cybersecurity topic became this whole bilateral topic, and the Russians actually ended up, before the invasion of Ukraine, arresting some alleged members of this group, right, dangling to the United States. Oh, here's, right, we'd be willing to crack down on cyber criminal groups potentially if, right, you do what we want, kind of thing. But now, and we had 22 and we had 2023, and Russian cyber actors were occupied with all kinds of other things. The Russian state was occupied with other things. But now we have a 2024 year where all of a sudden, of course, companies' cybersecurity defenses have gotten better, as they do always. But it just seems to me that there's a renewed space for these kinds of attacks that have both this dual economic effect, but also a political effect, or I should say a clear economic effect, but with a political motivation. And so that's kind of one genre of attack that I'm definitely looking out to see if we get more of, basically this criminal ransomware, but with a really, at the end of the day, a political motivation.
Yeah, and we are seeing examples recently. Denmark's cybersecurity agency published information that Russia has been probing a lot of its critical infrastructure. Yeah, and we've seen that across Europe, in the United States. So I think there's certainly that connection, and I think it'll be hard if those instances do occur to sort of separate out the financial motivation, given that a lot of targets for ransomware groups happen to be those companies or in those sectors that need to continue operating, like manufacturing and other defense-oriented sectors. But it'll be definitely something to watch. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we're kind of running towards the end of our time. Are there any other major implications kind of for business with regards to the Russian cyber threat actor landscape in 2024 that maybe you would want to highlight?
I would think that the continued most like frequent risk to businesses is going to be that reputational risk of these hacktivist operations that have been so widespread. And as these groups continue to try and really gain publicity for their operations, and it's such a these groups love targeting big name Western companies like Microsoft or like Lockheed Martin, and even if they're just website defacement attacks or distributed denial of service, which just render website accessibility, it cuts it off for a matter of hours or days at most. That's definitely going to continue for the sake of trying to garner some publicity around their
Yeah,
operations. But I think beyond that, notwithstanding major changes to Western Russian relations, I think that the threat of disruptive operations will to
yeah.
businesses will remain
Right.
low.
Right. Yeah, that's the other thing to remember here is that, right, a lot is determined by, right, what's going on in the United States, Europe, other countries, but also a lot depends on what happens in Russia itself and what happens in Ukraine, which is right why we recommend our readers to stay abreast of events by reading us at Rain.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining this conversation today, Matt. And to our listeners, if you want to learn more about RAIN's geopolitical intelligence solutions, go to rainnetwork.com. Thank you so much.